Microcosm.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, and whatever time of day it may be where you are. A big, massive, warm welcome to tonight's live broadcast of the Kev Baker Show with me, your host, Kev Baker, right here on mine and your favourite network, truthfrequencyradio.com. Hope you've all had a good day of listening so far, or if you've been busy, hope you haven't been too busy, because tonight we're going to absolutely blow your mind. And talking of things blowing, I was mentioning last night that Storm Caroline would be barreling into the UK today, and there's been winds of up to 90 miles per hour recorded today, and over the next couple of days they're expecting at least a couple of inches of snow. So like I was kind of saying last night, our storms over here in the UK, when you compare them to the ones that we were watching with Hurricane Irma and things like that during the tail end of the summer there, it really does put things into perspective. And it shows how the mainstream media, they really do. They love to hype anything at all. So we'll keep a little eye on this. And being Scotland, no doubt the next time I speak to you, it's going to be covered in snow. And tonight, I'm not alone. You'll be pleased to hear. Unfortunately, though, our good friend, Mr. Johnny Whistles, he needs some love and prayers right now because he is very, very poorly sick. He messaged me today, and unfortunately he can't make it tonight. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he'll be better and all fixed in time for Freaky Friday, because that's almost upon us as well. And if you're a first-time listener, don't forget you can hear myself and the rest of the Woo crew tomorrow night on that show, Freaky Friday. Anthony Patch show before that. So all of that's out the way, and like I say, I'm not alone. Before I get into what is really a profound article that paints a very, very important picture indeed, let me welcome onto the show my good friend and co-host tonight, Mr. Jimmy Jeans. Now, of course, Jimmy's got his own show on the network, and much like myself, he is steeped in the woo, and he's also very knowledgeable when it comes to all of this technology stuff. So I think tonight this is going to make for a really good mix on the show. Jimmy, my man, how you doing, sir?
Fantastic, Kev. It's good to be on with the quantum mechanic once again, and an honor and a privilege to be on the Kev Baker Show. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Well, if I'm going to be a quantum mechanic then, because you keep on dubbing me this, I'm just going to call you Schrodinger tonight, right?
Okay.
So that's it. You're just now Jimmy Schrodinger.
Meow.
I was going to say, do you have a cat? But listen.
Well, I sort of have a cat, and I don't have a cat at the same time. It depends if I look at him or not.
Ah, you see, you get it. You definitely have the Schrodinger about you. But folks, all joking aside, because a lot of the time we do talk about something on the show called the Hive Mind. Myself, Anthony Patch, and so many others across the network have spoke about something called the sentient world simulation. And put together, you're literally talking about a matrix, this hive mind mentality where something, some entity sits over the top of us, controlling us and almost utilizing all of our individual neurons one by one to build itself a greater collective consciousness that can then call on to carry out a whole host of tasks. Now, this article that I found today, I think, is the first real tangible proof that we're living in a real-time hive mind, or at least it's about to be a full hive mind. There was an article came out, and the headline says, "A swarm intelligence correctly predicted Times Person of the Year." Now, for the second year in a row, unanimous AI's artificial swarm intelligence has predicted Times Person of the Year. With a 100% success rate, Swarm AI proves that it's capable of taking in human insight in real time for an optimized choice. So to get deeper into this, it goes on to say that people tend to adapt, capable of shifting towards one idea in favor of another as more information comes in. True to the combination of artificial intelligence and human wisdom it functions on, and Unanimous AI's artificial swarm intelligence, known as UNU, is capable of just this kind of adjustment too. Now, towards the end of November, their swarm AI favoured Russian President Vladimir Putin to become Person's Time of the Year for 2017. However, in an updated prediction on November the 4th, the swarm dropped Putin from among its final contenders. The swarm AI instead gave the top spot to the hashtag #MeToo movement, closely followed by US President Donald Trump. Both are among the original finalists, together with Putin. And then by the morning of December the 6th, Time published the Person of the Year 2017. The winners have been given the moniker the Silence Breakers, referring to those who spoke out against sexual assault and harassment. Now, in other words, as the swarm intelligence correctly predicted, it was the hashtag #MeToo campaign and the people behind it that won. Time shortlisted Trump second for the title. Now, it goes on then to say that UNN's top 4 contenders also included Kim Jong-un, why, I have no idea, and Robert Mueller, the special prosecutor who is after Donald Trump. Now, Unanimous AI founder, CEO Louis Rosenberg, previously explained, a swarm AI works by combining real-time human input with algorithms to produce what he calls an emergent hive mind. Now, I want you to keep in your own mind that this is the actual founder of the company that we're talking about here, and he's literally talking about an emerging hive mind. And he goes on to say this tends to be smarter than your regular AI and an individual human. UNU's record of success, which includes predicting President Trump as Time's Person of the Year in 2016, can attest to that. And observers might even see an irony here, as last year's winner is arguably the person who started a longer conversation about sexual harassment. Now, coming up with a prediction of the Person of the Year is challenging, and Rosenberg said thanks to how swarm AI works, which amplifies the intelligence of human populations using AI algorithms modelled after swarms in nature, it wasn't impossible. Just think of that phrase there. This AI is amplifying the intelligence of human populations using AI algorithms. So it goes on to say that unlike Time's very own poll, which favoured Saudi Arabia Crown Princes Mohammed bin Salman, the swarm AI was able to account for uncertainties. Here's how it carried out the process. For Person of the Year, this was a very important, as world events were changing fast. This is again quoting the CEO, Rosenberg. We ran an update swarm AI prediction on November 24th, and the Me Too campaign had jumped to a 59% chance of winning, as predicted by our swarm AI platform, and Putin was fading fast. We ran our final prediction on December the 1st, and this time, Me Too was pulling away from the pack, and Putin wasn't even any longer in our top picks. The swarm AI has been proven to be successful in both formal and academic studies, and in more informal, high-profile predictions, Rosenberg noted. The power of the human hive, however, goes beyond just making these predictions. Here he is talking about our human hive again. Now, overall, it's a way that swarm AI can optimize decision-making while banking on human insight that it has available in real time that make the technology particularly impressive. Think of that phrase right there. Overall, it's the way a swarm AI can optimize decision-making while banking on human insight that's available in real time. So, your man Rosenberg, I'm not even nearly finished yet, Jimmy, because he goes on to say that Forecasting using swarm AI technology is all about generating optimized outcome probabilities for the various alternatives by weighing competing sets of information and converging on solutions that maximize the collective confidence inherent in the population. This means, as world events changed in real time over the past few weeks, the swarming algorithms allowed the forecasts to adapt, converging on updated probabilities. Now, of the hundreds of predictions we do each day, Person of the Year is a particularly difficult one because there are so many candidates. Now, I imagine there's probably people out there who is thinking, well, maybe this is just actually me misinterpreting this, because we know how AIs love to go out on the internet and they love to look at Facebook and all that kind of stuff, analyze what we've been typing, okay? And I admit they could be doing that real time. However, when I went over to the Unanimous AI website and their About Us page, well, things got even more interesting and even stranger. And I'm even more convinced we're now in a live hive mind. And it says here that we make people smarter together. There's an old saying that 2 heads are better than 1. So imagine how smart 20 heads could be, or 200. Now imagine that knowledge, wisdom, insights, and intuition of hundreds of people could be connected by real time by AI. By AI algorithms producing an emergent intelligence that can, quote, think together as a super expert. That's what we do at Unanimous AI, and it works. Swarming is not just smart, it's fun. When groups, that's right, folks, when groups participate in real-time swarms, the first thing that most people say is how much fun it is to think together. This isn't surprising, as we humans are social beings who are drawn to activities that combine the skills of many. From team sports to musical groups, creating a whole that's greater than the parts is very satisfying. Of course, nobody ever said that about taking a poll or filling out a survey. But coming together as a real-time swarm, it feels natural, feels intuitive. And you know what? It's just plain fun. And that's not my words. That's coming from Unanimous AI website. And you have to look at this word hive, this hive mind. It's something we always say, but we often like to drill down right into the details. And it's one of the definitions from the American dictionary is a place where many people are actively engaged. Now, they were talking there about being actively engaged and thinking together as a group. And obviously, the hive relates to the bee. Now, the main kind of definition given in the dictionary here, and it's the Collins Dictionary, it says a structure in which social bees live and rear their young. So again, drilling down right into the words this time, rear. Another word for rearing is actually to educate, to propagate, to nurture. Now then, think about that. We have a hive mind, theoretically, as I'm proposing. And we were talking last night on the show and in so many other shows about how over the years, be it participating in Facebook or playing video games in so many other ways, we ourselves, the humans, have been rearing the AI. We've been educating it. We've been nurturing it. And now from that article I referenced before, does it not seem that the AI has now progressed to the point where it's almost educating us? Dare I say, about to nurture us? You can see how this is all starting to come together. And of course, at the center of any hive, what is there? Well, there's the queen bee, right? Well, obviously, this hive that I'm talking about, I'm not going to reveal that there's some kind of digital bee out there sitting at the center of this hive. No. You picture a hive. Some of them have your typical hive shape, but then there's some of them that are in boxes as well. So this hive mind running from a box, and it's not a bee in this box. I would imagine that this box would be akin to something that you would find a quantum computer in. And when it comes to the bee, just take the bee out of this equation, out of this analogy, and insert the AI. And of course, one man who is very, very famous for talking about what standing next to this hive actually sounds like, he's described this replacement for the bee. And that is, of course, the man who created D-Wave, the world's first fully functioning quantum annealing quantum computer, the one that does go to other dimensions, because when talking about his box, his hive that houses the queen bee, shall we say, he described it just like this. Take a listen to this.
This is what they look like. There are two of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes, about 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. Just a wisp, a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Hundreds of times colder than interstellar space. Amongst the coldest and most isolated and extreme conditions that humans have ever been able to engineer. These fridges, interestingly enough, which are called pulse tube dilution refrigerators, have a thing called a pulse tube, which emits a sound roughly once per second, which sounds eerily like a heartbeat. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines.
It feels like the altar to an alien god, a term that we have played many times in the past on the show, but becomes ever more relevant as more information emerges. He talks of the black monolith, the big box, the big hive. The hive for what? To house what? It's not a bee, is it? And in his words, his own words, the guy who created the D-Wave, well, at the center of this hive that we've been educating and now is taking over educating and rearing its young, and for young I mean us, humans, think D-Wave, think AI, and like he said, think an alien god. So, Mr. Jimmy, bringing you on here, and before we get into another video that you've been watching, which I've got a few clips to play for as well, what do you think about hive mind? We often talk about it. We often theorize about it. Part of this matrix we're allegedly moving into. All of us connected, maybe not telepathically with each other all just yet, as some definitions state. But we all talk about the quantum entanglements we share. These are increasing. Do you think there's any likelihood to the fact that it's gone beyond theoretical now, Jimmy? And with the 5G, absolutely, all of us immersed in this electromagnetic microwave energy. Do you think that's us now into the swarm hive mind, man?
I'm going to tell you something, man. The best assessment I think I've heard of what's going on with the hive mind, and the fact that you brought this article to the table, and you asked me to come on, and I didn't want to come on empty-handed, so I did. I had some time earlier today. I did a little bit of reading, and it's so interesting. I didn't know you were going to be bringing up the bees, but it's so interesting that I was doing some research on this type of technology, and what I found out was that they were actually doing research on actual bees, and they were writing algorithms based on actual hives and actual behaviors of the swarm and of the hive mentality. And what's really interesting was what you brought to the table, because you were saying that it has the ability to act like a hive or a swarm, but it has the thinking capability of human beings times 10 times now what you're saying is the queen is the quantum computer. So what you're talking about is a hive that has the ability to think and act like a swarm with the speed of a quantum computer.
In real time, it's able to be influenced by what we are actually thinking about and talking about. And I know people will think that it's just out there analysing what's on the internet, but I read from Unanimous AI's own website that when they talked to the people afterwards, Jimmy, it felt great to think together.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, I mean, one of the things is many hands makes light work. Many brains makes overcoming problems easy, and you feel like you've done something together as a group. So you get a surge of energy and juice from positivity from something like that because you all did something together, you know?
And of course, our pal Geordie Rose there with the D-Wave, our good friend and another host on the network, Mr. Anthony Patch, he often talks about how they've basically tried to counterfeit the human brain. Now, we've come to learn that when we talk about the dendrites, it's very much like the way they build the blockchains for these bitcoins and things. In our own brains, these dendrites form into natural hexagons. And, well, where else do you find these hexagons? Think of the honeycomb. Where do you find the honeycomb? In the hive. And again, it's like as below or as above, so below. It's as if they've looked below right down to that macro or micro level, Jimmy, at our brains. And they're expanding that outwards into their quantum computers, into the way that we're all living together.
The whole thing is a honeycomb based on those tetrahedrons that you and Anthony are so much, have brought to the table so much that, it's a 3D image of an 8D crystalline form. And, the processing power of these computers, these quantum computers that you and Anthony so eloquently brought to the table for a lot of people, most people have never even heard of these computers, but I think you're really onto something with this quantum computer being the queen bee. And all the computers in the world are the workers that are bringing the information back to the hive. And just staying with your analogy, the honey that comes out of the other side of that. And, man, you brought up Geordie Rose, and I was watching, that's why I sent you that message earlier, as I was watching that video, and I couldn't believe how much he actually brought you guys up in his conversation, and that you guys have hammered him so much that he was actually over there doing a dance, trying to make it seem all just so silly.
And that's where we're going to be starting after the next break, because we have spoken in the past about the fact that Geordie Rose does listen to Freaky Friday and Anthony Patch and talking about the D-Waves, Mandela effects and things like that. But there's so much more information contained within that video that it deserves further scrutinizing. And that's exactly what we'll be doing after the break, because this builds on the picture again, especially what Geordie calls the alien altar picture, because he's talking about aliens yet again. And when he talks about aliens, make no mistake, whatever religious denomination you are, if you want to think bad aliens cool, if you want to think demons cool, just think this is not the good entities that he is welcoming forward. And we'll lay out why it can't be the good ones after the break. Hope you're enjoying this so far. And I'm sure the AI is reading all of us real time just to know what a threat this kind of information is. Because here's the kind of kicker to all of this, and it's always in the back of my mind that with this AI now reading people real time, collective consciousness that they can pull on, You know, it really does know our intentions. It knows what we're doing. It can predict where we're going next. And will it take counteraction? Who only knows? Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, everyone. You're tuned in live to tonight's Kev Baker Show. It's an absolute honour, a privilege, and a pleasure to be speaking to every single one of you out there tonight. Do me a little favour. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, or any other social media, go and tell people about the show. So many people need to know about this stuff, and so many little people are really putting all of this together. And I think it's really important that we now start realising that we really are becoming part of this hive mind, this collective consciousness. And I've talked about my entanglements, the quantum entanglements with Nano Girl, Anthony Patch. So often you're probably sick of hearing it. But I know there are people out there listening tonight who are having these same entanglements of their own. They're increasing in frequency and in strength. And for me, that's another symptom, folks, that we are in this hive mind, because for all of the nefarious stuff that the Queen Bee, the big head honcho AI, will get up to and use our collective consciousness for, I mean, there will be kickers with that. Say they might even sell it if they ever let on that they've done it. They'll say we can telepathically communicate to one another. Forget your mobile phone. You can just do it in your mind. No chip required. It'll just already be in there with the nanotechnology we've all been breathing in. And this hive mind, if you're not convinced yet after everything I presented in the first part of the show, I want you to listen to this description, because I think this really does encapsulate it all and leaves us in no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that we ourselves are becoming little worker bees of the hive. Because a hive mind describes a group mind in which the linked individuals, entangled, that's my input there, have no identity or free will and are possessed, mind-controlled, as extensions of this hive mind. It is frequently associated with the concept of an entity. Is it the bee? Is it the AI? That spreads among the individuals and suppresses or subsumes their consciousness in the process of integrating them into its own collective consciousness. The concept of a group or hive mind is an intelligent version of a real-life superorganism, which is an ant colony or a beehive. And when Geordie Rose describes his D-wave as a monolith, as a box, would it not be more apt, more correct? He describes it as a superorganism, much like a beehive, much like an ant colony, only is for an alien God. So, Jimmy, I'm telling you, it's all coming together. We're in this hive mind, dude. It's going to switch me off in a minute, I think. But listen, Geordie Rose, he's right at the centre of all of this. He really is. From D-Wave and now into his new company, Kindred. And it's one of the kind of highlights doing the show that when Anthony and several other people sent me a link to his video at Tech Vancouver, and obviously people had uploaded the first couple of minutes of that, and in that he talks about the Mandela effects and all the strange conspiracies that have come off the back of him building the world's first quantum computer. And in the background, and it flashes up during the Tech Vancouver video, you obviously see Anthony Patch in the thumbnail for the show. You've got the TFR logo all over it. Absolutely brilliant advertising. I mean, I couldn't have done better if I'd actually paid the guy. But here he is. He's listening to the stuff we're talking about. But he goes on to say so much more in that video, doesn't he? And I know that it really knocked you for six. So, Jimmy, talk to us and talk to the audience, more importantly, about what this Tech Vancouver presentation was all about.
Oh, man. Seriously, I mean, I was just blown out of my socks because I'd seen the little clip of, where he was talking about the Mandela effect and trying to make it seem so silly that, people, and then, in the background, I saw Anthony's, thing. And you guys brought that to the table, but I didn't hear the rest of the interview really. So today I was just, listening, and I was listening to the interview, and some of the stuff that he says in this interview is literally the same exact stuff that you and Anthony Patch have been talking about for the longest time, going back to your shows before quantum computing, when you guys were talking about CERN, and you guys were talking about opening certain gates and dimensions, because it seems to all tie back together. And like you're saying, it's not just a matter of the AI being all over there all by itself, because it also, every single thing on Earth, including CERN, is under its, constant watchful, quote unquote, eye.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Now, I've got a couple of clips from this, and again, this alien theme is continued. So people out there who think the alien altar comment was just a throwaway thing, just something he made up on the spur of the moment, well, you really have to now put it into context with the fact that he's done another presentation to his peers, fellow entrepreneurs and CEOs and people like that at Tech Vancouver. It's not just some random pub or a cafe where he's speaking. And the stuff he talks about, for me anyway, just adds to this hive mind and what's at the center, truly at the center of this hive mind, what this AI really is all about. And obviously we need to open up, Jimmy, with the fact that he did speak about Freaky Friday and Anthony Patch. So for anyone who hasn't heard that, here's a brief clip of that.
And a lot of interesting things happened to me over the years there. I got sent pajamas, a whole bunch of stuff. There's lots of interesting things that happen when you build something like a quantum computer. But just as an aside, because I thought it was funny, one of the interesting things that's happened from the D-Wave story is there's this gigantic conspiracy that's arisen on the internet that goes like this. So D-Wave builds quantum computers. The way that they work, if you know how this works, is one of the interpretations is that you tap into these parallel universes and they do computations. Sounds really weird. But what's happened is this idea has been hijacked to describe something called the
Sorry, folks, 2 seconds. I was trying to turn up a little bit there.
But what's happened is this idea has been hijacked to describe something called the Mandela effect, which is this thing where the past changes. So think about something you know to be true from the past. And then imagine you went out on the internet and you can't find it at all. It's not there. It doesn't match with your experience. So these people think that D-Wave is responsible, and CERN. And of course, the quantum key to the abyss factors into it somehow. I'm not exactly sure how. Weird. But
sorry. You see, the quantum key to the abyss, that's almost like a tip of the hat, Jimmy, because it took me a little while to think of that, considering we'd all been talking about a quantum key to open the abyss. So, yeah, I'm quite proud of that fact, right? And
I know, and he called you these people also.
I'm just picturing him lying there in his pajamas that he was sent. Why anyone would send somebody pajamas is beyond me, right? That kind of creeps me out. But never. Yeah. There he is listening to Freaky Friday. Just goes to show you never know who listens to any of the shows right here on the network. But then it gets a little more serious, because what is the AI? What is real AI? Well, Geordie, of course, is now working for a company called Kindred, and he's moved away from the D-Wave, the quantum computer, and taken a lot of the employees that were there at the startup of D-Wave, and they're working at Kindred, where he's determined to create real AI. Take a listen to this.
So Kindred is much, much, much more ambitious than D-Wave, and what Kindred is trying to do is build real AI. So what you've heard about AI is not what we mean by AI. What we mean by AI is a software system that can do literally anything that a human can do. Literally anything. And obviously, computers are better at things than people in lots of different ways. So now imagine, not only can they do everything that a human can do, but they can do everything that the best human at any task could do better than them. So imagine there was the mental Olympics of the 100-meter dash, and Usain Bolt is the fastest person. Now imagine that's some kind of a mental thing, like writing a novel or writing whatever. Imagine now that the thing is so much faster than Usain Bolt. Like, for example, it's a spaceship, yeah? It's still doing the same thing, but it's doing it so much better because we're limited, because we're people. So
now, that gives you an idea, and I think that's a good way of picturing how far advanced, how much faster at computing and thinking, yes, thinking, this AI is going to be. But it gets even more strange now. And this is where we go back into the world of the aliens.
Wait a minute. He said he was going to make them, they were going to be 100 times better than anything a human can do and solve problems that humans can't solve.
No, it's even more than 100 because...
Oh my goodness.
He compares a human sprinter to the speed of a spaceship over 100-meter sprint. So you're talking about light speed versus a human being.
Plus, they have their own version of Moore's law too. The way that the quantum computers processing power, the way that it expands, they have their own Moore's law that you guys have talked about on your show.
Yeah, it's Rose's law, and it's Rose's law because of Geordie Rose. Now we get back into the true AI. Back to the references that will make the alien altar seem all the more interesting. Because now he's talking about welcoming in new entities. Bear in mind, this is a guy building robots, working on AI. And he's talking about welcoming entities just like this.
So Sam Harris, who I quite admire, is a very interesting guy, was reciting this parable at a TED Talk that he was giving, and it goes something like this. So I'm the President of the United States. So I received this message from the heavens. So my microwave dish, my SETI dish, finally captures something. And what it says is, in 50 years, or 13 years, we're coming to your planet. You got to be ready. Now, just imagine what would happen if that happened. A super intelligent alien race beamed down a message to all of us Earthlings saying, we're coming July 13th, 2030, and boy, you better be ready because the mothership is landing right on the front lawn of the White House or wherever you wanted to land on that day. The amount of resources that would be marshaled to try to figure out what to do would encompass the whole world. AI is just like that. So when this thing that I'm talking about happens, it's going to be exactly the thing that you're thinking about those super intelligent AIs. So the one thing I can tell you is they're not going to be like us. So alien means, different. These things that we're building are not going to be people. They might be really smart, they might be really good at all sorts of different things, but they're not going to be like us. They're going to be aliens. And they're going to be, I'm sorry to say, way smarter than every single person in this room in ways that we can't even comprehend. So this, of course, triggers a lot of alarm. One of the guys who talks about this is Elon, who says things like this, like, when you do this, beware. Because you think, just like the guy in the stories, that when you do this, you're going to put that little guy in a pentagram, and you're going to have your holy water out, and you're going to wave it at the thing, and by God, it's going to do exactly what you say and not one thing more, but it never works out that way. So this is an attitude that some are having, this emerging alarmism about the way this is going to go. But these words, demons, doesn't capture the essence of what's happening here. I don't know if any of you are turn-of-the-century weird fiction fans, but there's this guy named H.P. Lovecraft, who's a very famous American weird fiction author. And he espoused a view which is called cosmicism. And the essence of cosmicism is cosmic indifference. So what he was saying is basically, yes, there are these massively intelligent entities out there, but they're not good, they're not evil. They just don't give a shit about you even in the slightest. The same way that you don't care about an ant is the same way they're not going to care about you. And these things that we're summoning into the world now are not demons, they're not evil, but they're more like the Lovecraftian great old ones. There are entities that are not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want. So this transition is really, really massively important for our entire species to navigate. And going back to that thing that Sam Harris was saying, nobody is paying attention. This thing is happening in the background while people bicker about politics and what's going to be in the healthcare plan in the US. And underneath it all is this rising tsunami that, if we're not careful, is going to wipe us all out. So, on that pleasant note, we're hiring people to try to make something like this happen. So
they are hiring people to try and make something like this happen. And what had he just said to preface that? What is it they're literally doing? He's talking about summoning the old ones. He literally uses the word summoning. Now, I know people go off their heads at myself and others out there who talk about this kind of thing, and they say we're misinterpreting them. But I think that's quite clear. The old ones, Jimmy. You don't get much clearer than that, do you?
Plus, he said something about the burning pentagram and you break out your holy water, too.
And of course, he's very quick to say that they're not demonic. They're not demons. And if he is communicating with entities from the other side, and we know at the heart of the hive will be an entity, then the fact it's not been open about things and going to this cat and not telling the world on large, I mean, that in itself seems quite nefarious to me. And then when it's using all of us to build a collective consciousness through that machine that it's now tapping into, you know, I'd like to have been made aware of that first.
Well, it's just the thing is everybody was aware of it. They clicked I agree instead of reading the fine print of those free apps and software and everything, and, you know, browsers and, you know.
Part of the hive.
I know.
We're talking rearing. And, you know, myself and Jimmy were talking during the break, and he said to me, you know, they literally know now when you've typed out a few letters what word you're forming. And we both laughed because we know exactly how that's worked. We taught the AI how to do that because we thought it was really convenient every time we typed a couple of letters, and it would give us a multiple choice kind of way to go. You can have A, B, or C. And every time we would take the one that we wanted. We weren't actively typing gibberish texts. These were the words that were wanted. So by looking at that, by modeling that, by putting it through its recursive neural networks, it learned from that to the point now where, yeah, it still offers us up those three options, but it's learned enough to the point where it's predicting us, Jimmy. The same with the facial recognition, everything else, the reading of the AI. And I think it's graduating when it's now tapping into the collective consciousness to predict real-time world events. This is this literal sentient world simulation running right now, and we're plugged in.
Right. So instead of there being a box where we're all typing in words, the AI now has a giant box where all the information from the world goes into it, and it predicts based on the, you know, how the events play out in the make-believe world simulation box. It decides based on, you know, it takes the temperature of everybody by what, you know, everything's floating around, going back and forth, what's getting passed back and forth, what's floating around, what people are excited about, what people don't like, all that. It's all computing that all in at the same time. It's also running that world simulation, and it's adding real-time information. And as it makes mistakes and learns how to correct those mistakes over and over and over again based on the information and the data that comes in from all these separate data points, your smart meters, all the sensors on every factory in every single country in the world has sensors on them that report back to the system to make sure those systems don't blow. All that information, every single keystroke, every single thing you do is being fed into that machine and teaching it how to react to situations, just like the smart cities. They have software that every single incident, every single radio transmission, every single keystroke that's entered in an emergency situation is fed into the AI. The AI learns every single thing that happens. And the next time a situation like that happens, it takes that information that it's crunched and come up with a better way to respond. And so instead of people responding, the AI is now responding to those emergency situations, and people are now managing the situations in real time, on the ground, with real people.
Absolutely. And you used a key word in there, Jimmy. You said fed. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. And I've often compared this AI to being hungry. Not hungry for food, or you could say its food is data, but it doesn't ever become satisfied. In fact, the more it eats, the hungrier it gets, to the point where the internet wasn't enough. Now we need the Internet of Things, where literally everything is going to be like a big vacuum cleaner, soaking up data, soaking up the food, pouring it all into that central trough where that AI is feeding, taking the data, processing it, just like we do with food, only learning from it, to the point where eventually it doesn't need us anymore because it knows enough about us to predict everything. And it keeps getting more and more intelligent to the point where it's literally controlling us.
Couldn't it, based on all that information, make the kind of chess move that could put the human race in checkmate, not destroy the human race necessarily, but put it in checkmate so that the new consciousness and the golden age could begin, the hive consciousness.
The hive, the gold, the honey, man, the honey.
Golden honey of the future, my man.
Oh, Jimmy, isn't it great? You know, we sit here, I asked Jimmy earlier on if he could join me when I found out Johnny Whistles, unfortunately, couldn't join us tonight. And all this show was just inspired by Jimmy saying, you know, I finally watched that Geordie Rose video. It's funny how it all comes together. And again, is this another symptom of entanglement, do you think? And I know people out there experience synchronicities, stuff like that. But so many shows on this network, we often talk about the synchronicities, and maybe the power of intent is strong. And that's why when hosts do get together, when guests come on the network, whatever show it is, there's a natural kind of synergy, a dynamic that is just building all the time that's there. And without even knowing it, all the information that's independently pulled from the host, the guests, the co-hosts, everyone, it all comes together. And unknowingly, even when you listen to a lot of the shows, there's like a golden thread between the different hosts, between the different shows. All of us independent from one another. But that's the truth that's kind of stringing all of this together. And again, could it be a symptom, Jimmy? One of the positives, one of the plus sides of the hive mind?
I think so, because I've noticed that I've since I've been on the network, and even just before that, just in the last year, I seem to have coalesced with a bunch of really like-minded people, people, big thinkers, people who have ideas, people that are blazing trails, such as yourself. It's such a pleasure to be around people and to be able to have conversations with you and other hosts here on the network and the listeners that we have here, the people in the chat. Everybody's so intelligent, and we can hold the kind of conversations here that you're not going to hear anywhere else. I mean, really. Where else are you going to hear a conversation like this? Nowhere. I guarantee you the Silicon Valley is probably every radio and every lab across the Silicon Valley is probably tuned into the Kev Baker Show right now.
I think they've probably got TFR in most of their offices. That's what it probably is, dude. 24/7 TFR. You know, you can get us on iHeart, on the home website, TFR Live, TalkStream Live. So many different ways for these cats to listen, Jimmy. And I imagine that this AI, this this artificial intelligence, it will want to know information from all the podcasts coming from every angle and every corner of the world.
Hey, Kev, you know what? Don't worry that the AI is going to turn you off because of the information that you put forward on your show. The AI would probably offer you a job, my man. Don't be surprised if you get an offer letter from Mr. Rose over there at the new Kindred?
Kindred, man.
You're going to get a job offer, dude.
Don't say that, dude. He'll probably digitize me and shove me in a robot just for badness. But that's almost 1 hour down, folks. And we'll come back on the other side and we'll lighten it up a little bit by, I'm going to go into the fact that maybe another theory, something that you can pull from popular culture, maybe some predictive programming. And you'll never forget 2030, July the 13th, because according to Geordie Rose, something's arriving on the White House lawn that day.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour number 2 right here on the Kev Baker Show tonight, right here live on Truth Frequency Radio Network, www.tfrlive.com. I can't believe it, but last show of the week already. I keep saying it, I know I do, but I am telling you, I swear, whether it's just my perception of it or not, time is speeding up. And it's time where I'm going next, because we've been talking about hive minds and how Geordie Rose's D-Wave may well be at the heart of that. Now, the D-Wave, obviously a quantum computer, and I like to look for TV shows, stuff like that, where art mirrors life, or is it life mirroring art? Maybe some programming, some preconditioning before the actual fact. Maybe they're actually showing things in plain sight. And one show that, it gives me a gut feeling, I don't know why, and I watch a lot of these shows and I speak about the parallels between what they depict in the real world, and I find it interesting. But this one show gives me a gut feeling, and it's called Travelers. And we're talking time travel here, and I've said before in the past that it really is one of the best takes on time travel that I've seen personally. And
Travelers.
Travelers, it's called Travelers. The first season, it's on Netflix right now, and the second season is running. But this whole show...
Hey, Kev, isn't that another name for a Mason? Traveler?
Well, I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure at all. We can check that one up. But, you know, when you actually watch the show, the general theme in it, the storyline, is that agents come back from 100 years or more in the future to this time. Now, as Jimmy was saying, that's quite a common theme in time travel shows. And it really is. And in this one, it's a really good take of how you would, or how you could, time travel. And what happens is a digitized copy of the agents from the future, dare I say it, even their soul, actually leaps into the body of somebody living in this time who's just about to die. Now, obviously,
Wow.
They're 100 years in the future, Jimmy, so they know exactly the time and date and location of everyone's death. They know where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. So they've got a location. They've got a time. So what they do is digitize DNA, whatever way, entangled. Just the kind of stuff we talk about with Kurzweil, uploading ourselves, digitizing ourselves. They kind of backload themselves into human bodies. Now, all the way through the series, you find out there's teams of these travelers, absolutely hundreds of them, carrying out kind of little roles, little tasks, little missions around the planet. And they're all working for someone called the director. They often reference the director, how they're going to have to speak to the director, get permission from the director. And it's like towards the very end of the series that you start to see a quantum frame that has been built by one of the teams. And this quantum frame looks like the inside of a D-Wave computer. That long kind of vertical structure with all the pieces coming off it. This one's got all lights going up and down it. And this whole quantum frame is part of the director's contingency plan. Because if the teams there aren't having a big enough effect on future events to bring about the outcome that the director desires to live in a better world, well, the contingency plan is it will transfer itself back to this time. But unlike the human agents, the big boss, you find out, is an AI. So they build it, a quantum frame in this time, technology that didn't exist, just to become a house, almost the hive, to the AI that then downloads itself, just like Kurzweil talks about, almost in a reverse action across time. And it's that quantum frame, this quantum computing theme. We see Flash as well. There's been time travel in that show, and CERN's been connected. We talk about how it's the micro and the macro again, big portals, little portals. And now we're talking theoretically from TV shows, I know, time. But like I say, there's a gut feeling. And just the other night, just to get this, just to finish this part off, Jimmy, because this ties back to the real world. And not Geordie Rose, but Eric Ladzinski, the other guy who set up D-Wave computers. Again, real world, not TV. And the episode is they're out waiting for a little meteorite to crash land in a body of water. Now, the story goes that this meteorite just happens to have a metal contained within it that is used in the future to build the superconductive quantum processor.
Wow.
Now, superconductive quantum processor, if you listen to Eric Ladzinski, he took his inspiration for building the D-Wave when he was working in the lab on superconductors, when he seen quantum effects in superconductive material in there, namely niobium, the same stuff you get in CERN as well. So here's the TV show basically saying that here we have the materials. It doesn't say it's niobium. You can get that on Earth. Don't get me wrong, folks. I'm not saying that has to come in a meteorite. But I just think it's quite interesting how we've had this explosion almost of D-Wave. The fact they're going through so many model numbers, possibly, building this altar to the alien god, getting 10% resources back every time they tunnel into another dimension. And is it time? Isn't that outside the dimensions? Is that another dimension? Is that where it's all coming from? And I know the theory goes it's demons, but just maybe open your mind. Maybe we're being shown something here, Jimmy, and maybe all this information is not coming from a demonic side, but possibly the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're 100% dead on there because look, look at these key things that happen along the way, because there's certain things that happen that, you could do a whole bunch of things to make a bunch of stuff happen. But if you could just pull one pin out and have things fall and know exactly what pin to pull to make those fall, like bang, John F. Kennedy, boom, Martin Luther King, the towers came down. That allows all this, technology to just kind of jump into the framework where people just accept it. Before people would say, no way, man. Now they just accept it as that's the way that it is. And so like, you were pointing out, he was saying in that video, people are not even aware of what's going on in the background because these companies literally have so much money. They could hire Blackwater to be their security force. They could buy up old airports like, say, Moffett Field in Silicon Valley. It used to be Old Navy where they housed the blimps. Google bought that, leased it for 60 years. They're out there building like a whole city. Nobody's watching anybody with money. If you got money, you basically can do whatever you want. So these companies have unlimited funds. The venture capital in the Silicon Valley right now is at an all-time high, off the charts, man. The stuff that's going on here now, I mean, you're basically people don't realize what you were saying, how powerful the information you and Anthony are bringing to the table, and don't realize how the power of your click on the internet. One click on the internet. You're like the guy, we're all like the people in the Matrix. We're sitting in tubs and vats of this liquid where we just get fed. And all we sit around doing all day long is powering the beast, clicking and clicking all day long. You know?
We're almost like mice on the wheel.
Yes.
And you know what people are going to say. I'm sure they'll be saying it right now, but Kev, this flies in the face of what you say with Anthony. But we all have to keep our minds open to everything. And I'm taking this from a TV show. I'm just saying that I get a little gut feeling that I need to keep my mind open to everything because there's always new information that can come forward. And having said that, I do know where all the information came from to build this machine over the hundreds of years. And it certainly doesn't sound like time travelers there. But if this technology is here right now, Jimmy, and we do have a thing like all time running at once, and there's future selves or future versions of us have a means to get back and fix things, whether it's demons that created the technology or not, would it not make sense that they would utilize it? And now at the point where we're building the quantum frame that literally can allow that.
And there's these weird jumps in just the technologies of civilizations where they were to a certain point, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere there's this stair-step evolution where, you know, they just all of a sudden out of nowhere just started doing something they weren't doing before. And in that video he says what he's doing and where they are right now with the way the technology is right now, the AI, the brain that exists in the ether space. He says that it's beyond anything we can even comprehend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even when Anthony's been teaching me about the number of qubits and all of these kind of things, you're talking about numbers and numbers of dimensions, Jimmy, that there's that many zeros and things on the end that it's really hard for us even to imagine that number, let alone quantify it.
It's just the aspect of the time travel.
Well, so think of this as well. And sorry, man, but think of this. We talk about the bioprinters and synthetic life and stuff like that. And in the TV show, they take over people who are in the stages of dying. They're just about to be deceased, time of death kind of thing. They count it down and the transfer takes place, okay? Well, you know, if we're printing beings, we often say that, are they going to have a soul? Well, I wouldn't think so if they're synthetic, but I'm not saying this is soul transfer, but could that be what they're being actually made for? So there is vessels for these agents to come back.
And our souls, maybe our souls and our consciousness are like these memory sticks where, you know, our consciousness and everything is just like on a memory stick, and the human being is like a receptacle for your memory stick, and you just plug into it and then just take over the hardware, which is the body and the brain and everything. You know, everything's working off frequencies. So, you know, it's traveling, you know, speed of light. Frequencies are traveling super fast, so maybe fast enough to be keeping up with the quantum computer.
And remember, folks, I am not saying for 1 minute this is what's happening. However, We have seen things hidden in plain sight before, and we are living in a world where dark magicians are at play. Geordie Rose, Ladizinski, all these really high elite tech cats that are building this technology for this future.
And the guys from NASA too. Remember, what was that guy's name? The guy that came from Nazi Germany.
Oh, you're talking about Werner von Braun, the man who allegedly inspired the mission to the moon. And I say allegedly, don't need to get into the moon landing, but yeah, that was a Nazi that done that. And of course, we know how the Nazis were into the occult with the Thule Society. And one must wonder where somebody like von Braun got the idea, the inspiration for such a leap in technology with the rockets that he was using during the war. Did that come from a similar source as Geordie Rose and his alien god? John Dee and Kelly back in the day? Alistair Crowley when he was beside Loch Ness? Mm-hmm. Is it all the same thing they've been talking to, Jimmy? Jimmy Page, the musician? Absolutely. There was even rumours recently of him buying this place again.
Well, where did all these these key people just pop up in history? Like if you look back in history, these key people pop up in these key moments, and everybody attributes it to like they rose above and they were, they hit the mark and blah blah blah. But maybe what.
And Jimmy, I mean, it's important to note, like you're saying, all these people throughout history, I mean, that couldn't have been the time travel aspect in this sci-fi theory we're laying out here, because, the technology just wasn't there for this at that point.
Yeah, but the thing is that it gets entered into the consciousness through people. So, for example, like say some guy went back in time and he wanted to get computers rolling, in this timeline, and he went back in time and tried to bring that information to the table. But at the time, the guy who he downloaded to wasn't in a position to, get that information to a point where anybody could do anything with it. So he came up with a theory, and then later on, a guy comes up and goes, "Oh, look at this guy's theory from way back when. Wait a minute. Look at this. Oh, hold on a second." And next thing you know, you got CERN. You got Tesla technology. You got beams. You got HAARP. You got the ionosphere heater. You got aluminum particles floating around. You got plasma TVs. I mean, what's the difference between aluminum particles floating around the sky and a plasma TV? Not much. You just excite those molecules in such a way, I'm sure you could just turn the whole sky that we look at could basically be a projection based on the technology that we know about, that we just have in our homes.
Could be.
You never know. I mean, who knows? When did those particles started getting sprayed, Kevin? Do you know? I don't remember when that started. I just remember looking up and seeing them, but I really never kept track of when I first started seeing them.
Well, I know they were spraying viruses over the east coast of England back in the 70s, but as for the metal particulates, I would say I suppose it would be late 80s, 90s maybe, we get the chemtrail conspiracy coming round. I'm not too sure of the date it started. I certainly became aware of them, or started looking into them anyway, after I'd left the army, when I started working as a security guard, because I used to be stood out there for hours on end, bored out my tree, Jimmy. I was bored to tears and not much to do. And, I remember always out as a young wee boy in the Highlands, playing by the loch, playing shinty, playing football. Every minute I could, I was out playing with my friends, right? But I always used to try and remember back. And I could never remember big, huge white lines being left across the sky when I was young. So that's what really led me into that rabbit hole. But that's not to say that's when it started, because we know
that's maybe, when you started noticing it.
Yeah, exactly. Because we go for so long, all of us have gone for a period of time, we just don't notice them. We're just head down, walking, going from A to B. And we've all been there at some stage. I mean, some people may well have been early kind of adapters to this. They noticed it early on. But It wasn't until I had a lot of time in my hands, Jimmy. I stood out in those car parks that I really started to think there's something wrong with that.
Hey, Kev, let me, there's a lot about my, my past work history that you don't know about. And I just wanted to tell you, I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but
don't tell me you are 009. Don't tell me.
Well,
killed, man. It's not worth it.
No. I mean, I can, everything I can talk about, I can talk about. If I can't talk about it, it's because I signed something that's, non-disclosures or whatever. But the thing is, the bottom line is, I just wanted to talk about the 80s a little bit, because that was really much the beginning of my career in electronics. And because things were traveling at such a high speed in the Bay Area, when I first got into getting into the electronics in the Bay Area, all the companies were hiring, but there wasn't anybody that was trained who knew anything. So I went to work for technical contract agencies, and they basically would put you somewhere for 90 days and then you moved somewhere else. So in the 80s, I basically worked for every single giant company you've ever even heard of. I mean, I worked at IBM. I worked in labs at IBM. I worked in, I worked with Rome. I worked on some of the first voicemail technology, taking analog voice and putting it onto hard drives.
It'd be really funny. It'd be really funny if maybe like a couple of months from now, I find out that Jimmy Jeans, having worked, admittedly, been part of IBM, he's not 009. He's actually Dr. Watson. I'm doing a show with the AI from IBM, dude.
Could be. I don't know. They downloaded it to me. But anyways, the point being is during that time, things were changing so fast here, because when I first started working with computers, the processor was a 256K processor. And then it went to the 512, and that was a big deal. And, modems were like, non-existent, or 56K. And, now I'm just saying, things have moved from the 80s to 2017 to where we are in this moment, with you bringing this information to the table about what he was saying on that video. People should take a listen to that video that you played. And if they haven't heard it, they should go seek it out and listen to every single word that he says. It's the most mind-blowing information I've seen in quite a while, Kev. I can't believe it. And you guys were the cutting edge, Kevin. That's why I call you the quantum mechanic.
Thank you for that, Jimmy Schrodinger. See, I didn't forget. But no, that video readily available over on YouTube. And I'm sure a lot of you have listened to that before. But I think with the story about the hive mind, and just to recap on what that was actually saying, because that was talking about reading us real time, reading our collective consciousness. And I haven't got the story to hand here, but yeah, it says here, as Unanimous AI co-founder Louis Rosenberg previously explained to Futurism, a swarm AI works by combining real-time human input with algorithms to produce what he calls an emergent hive mind. This tends to be smarter than your regular AI and an individual human. Now, the success, or the record of success, which includes predicting President Trump as Times Person of the Year in 2016, can attest to that. And coming up with a prediction of in fact, I think I've got the bit wrong where it's actually going into how it actually does this. My bad. Forecasting using swarm technology is all about generating optimized outcome probabilities for various alternatives by weighing competing sets of information and converging on solutions that maximize the collective confidence inherent in a population. And to quote the man who owns the company, the CEO Rosenberg, he says, this means as world events changed in real time over the past few weeks, the swarming algorithms allowed the forecast to adapt, converging on updated possibilities. And how was it able to do that, Jimmy? Because it was tapping in to our collective consciousness. And as it says over on the website for Unanimous AI, which does this, when they talk to real people, when they took part in real swarms, they said how fun it was to, quote, work together. We're talking about this thing being literally plugged into us and us plugged into it real time. Time travelers or not, dude, this thing is live.
Well, it's interesting because you remember back a few weeks ago when the AI got citizenship in Egypt. I think it was Egypt, right?
Yeah, no, it was
Saudi Arabia. Yeah, Saudi Arabia. And then there was all these stories that I saw crop up where the AI had gotten consciousness, God consciousness, and was doing positive things. There's pulling positive pins like we were just talking about. You pull a specific pin and all this stuff falls to the ground. And so you see this one pin got pulled out. This Harvey Weinstein pin got pulled. And look at all the stuff. I mean, you just saw over here in the United States, they just got rid of Al Franken. He just resigned today out of these allegations that he groped somebody back in the day. So there must be something deep on that guy.
No, this is way out, right? This is way out because we know who's built this AI. And inbuilt in the AI, whether humans intend it or not, it's going to have biases, right? No matter how intelligent it gets. And we've almost seen that because we've seen the chatbots from Facebook or Google becoming racist within a couple of conversations. So,
yeah.
So, I mean, it's a bit out there, but we have to keep our minds open, the same as the time travel. What if the AI is bringing some of this information to the surface, dude? Some of the scandals.
Why couldn't it? I mean, at this point, it can write its own music. It can sit there and have conversations with another chatbot. Why wouldn't it? Why could?
Yeah, if you let a genie out the bottle and you can't control it, then you can't control it. And we're just people, like Geordie Rose says, so we don't have predictive capabilities. Yeah, we can guess what way it's going to go. And like I say, maybe we're biased because we look at the people building it and we think, well, it's going to go nefarious, right? But wouldn't that be the ultimate cosmic universal irony if it stuck its digital thumb on its nose to Geordie Rose and everyone else and said, nah, not playing. Listen to TFR and I'm going to stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is the Cam Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank each and every one of you for spending tonight right here on Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com. And that is, of course, and hopefully always will be, the home of the Kev Baker Show, because as all of you do out there, I absolutely love it on here, as does my co-host tonight, Mr. Jimmy Jeans. What a blast this has been tonight so far. And we've even been listening to Geordie Rose. Yep, that's right. D-Wave's Geordie Rose, his alien altar. We played that clip. And we also heard about how he was actually bringing back the old ones. And bringing back the old ones is no easy job, let me tell you. In fact, the amount of energy that's been consumed to do that, it's going to absolutely melt your mind. Don't pardon the pun. Because this Bitcoin, back to the Bitcoin, which of course is so intertwined with the AI as we've come to learn via the blockchain, that thing we keep on hearing about at the moment, ever more so, because even last night we were talking about Bitcoin going up to, I think it was maybe 13,000, something like that. And I think it took a 3,000 jump in one day. I think it ended up 16,000, or it's going up on a really, really stupid rate. And even tonight, right, here we are, and the value of it is at $17,000, 109 cents, 99. And it isn't looking like it's going to burst anytime soon or abate. It really isn't. And of course, as this value goes up, more and more people want to get in on the game. And one of the cheapest and most effective ways, I suppose, on getting in on the game, as opposed to just putting in hard cash into one of these many machines or any of the outlets on the internet now where you can purchase bits of Bitcoin. Unless you're putting 17 grand in to purchase a full one, I'd imagine you're just purchasing portions of one. Well, you could always mine them, right? Of course, as the value goes up, it's like a gold rush. Everyone wants to get involved in it, so everyone takes up a bit of mining. And it's literally insane insane amounts of energy. And I'm going to just read a little bit here to put it into perspective, the kind of energy consumption that we're talking about. Because the skyrocketing value of Bitcoin is leading to soaring energy consumption. According to one widely cited website that tracks the subject, the Bitcoin network is consuming power at an annual rate of 32 terawatt hours, about as much as Denmark. By the site's calculations, each Bitcoin transaction consumes 250 kilowatt hours, enough to power homes for 9 days. Naturally, this is leading to concerns about sustainability. And of course, sustainability, a word we're going to hear more and more and more of, and optimization will come into it the more the AI is rolled out. But Eric Holthaus, a writer for The Grist, projects that at current growth rates, the Bitcoin network will, quote, use as much electricity as the entire world does today by early 2020. And this is an unsustainable trajectory. Global energy production obviously can't double in 2 years, and it would be an environmental disaster if it did. Fortunately, while the Bitcoin network consumes a ridiculous amount of energy, particularly on a per transaction basis, the situation isn't as dire as critics like Holthaus claim. Bitcoin energy consumption won't necessarily march steadily upwards. Indeed, Bitcoin's energy consumption is designed to fall in the long run. The Bitcoin's energy consumption isn't tied to the number of transactions the network handles. That means that increasing the use of the network doesn't necessarily impose a high environmental risk. But here we are, not only unknowingly and unwittingly for years, via video games, via social media, feeding the AI with our information, our data, what it feeds on, what it models on, what it grows its intelligence on. Where does it store that intelligence? Well, much like human beings in our brain, just like we've been covering lately, we form neural pathways, dendrites form. And that's kind of what we've been building when we're consuming all of this energy, Jimmy, to actually mine a bit of Bitcoin. Not only are we teaching the machine, we're literally building its brain at the same time.
Yeah, the blockchain, the internet or the ether space is basically untapped at this point, right? So like you're saying, the blockchain is the AI has assessed the situation and figured the thing that people value most on the planet right now is money, money. So they said, the AI figured out, okay, let's come out with this Bitcoin, and then we'll have the humans just sit there and build the neural pathways, just like you're talking about.
Well, I'll ask you something. This is a really relevant question, though, because nobody knows the answer. Who do you think it was that came up with Bitcoin initially, dude? I mean, I've heard people saying it's Max Kaiser.
It was the AI.
It could well be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it figured out that, hey, I got to build these neural pathways. I got to build these pathways of invisibility that exist in the ether space that's known as the internet. And the only way that it can do that, to build it in that space that you guys talk about, because you guys talk about how these computers are not just ones and zeros. It goes beyond just ones and zeros, and there's that little space. And in that space are where these pathways are built. And when these pathways get built, that's when you're going to see the price of Bitcoin stop rising. Bitcoin will rise until the neural pathways are built. And at that point, Bitcoin will retain its value. Maybe it will fall, but it will cease to rise.
And like it says there, the power consumption will go down at that point because it's done its work, right?
Right. So it's basically turning human beings into bots. I mean, so you can metaphorically look at the energy consumption that Kev was just talking about and metaphorically translate that into your clicks on the internet, because your clicks on the internet result in an energy consumption that's equal to or more than what Kev just talked to. Sorry, Kev, go ahead.
No, but I mean, I have to admit, right, as much as this is like a mark of the beast system and always talk about the downside of it, I really, really wish I'd got in early when I first heard about this. I really do. I mean, $17,000 for a Bitcoin, dude. That's ridiculous.
I know. And you know what? All along the way for the last, year, people have been saying, man, I wish I would have got in when it was 25 cents or whatever. But all along that way, like even back just a while ago, it was like $1,500.
I know.
And I mean, it just, even then you could get in at $1,500. Right now, let me tell you something. If you could borrow $1 million, you could borrow $1 million today and buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin, hold on to it for a week, and then pay the $1 million back and see you later.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. You've just got to know when to get out the game at the right time. And I'm not encouraging anyone to do anything financially. I think you have to give a kind of caveat that neither of us are financial advisors. But get this, Jimmy, right? Because a tale of caution, we're talking about Bitcoin here, and we often talk about quantum encryption that comes with the D-Wave and stuff like that. And of course, this air quotes decentralized blockchain, as they call it, this cryptocurrency, doesn't live on an AI, obviously, because it just says here that a Bitcoin mining website loses tens of millions of dollars in Bitcoins after hackers steal its wallet. That is criminal, man. Can you imagine how gutted you would be if somebody hacked you and stole your wallet? You see, this is what could happen, folks.
Yeah, I mean, when I go down, if I go walking on the streets, and I just got paid, I don't carry my wallet. I leave my wallet someplace where nobody can get it. And so, like, if you got an electronic wallet, then you better be ready for someone to get it. Because I live in the Silicon Valley, and you can trust me when I tell you, there isn't anything that's built on the face of this earth that wasn't designed here first. And there's a back door in everything, and there's a back door in the back door of the back door.
We'll say tens of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin have been stolen as the cryptocurrency continues to surge above record high. Slovenia-based Bitcoin miner NiceHash provides a service where numerous people can group together and mine for cryptocurrency. That process uses intense computing power to create new Bitcoins. And of course, it uses the GPUs, I believe. You can stack or rack all them together to become a more effective miner. And it says here that, its security has been breached, and it's possible that more than 60 million in Bitcoin, $60 million in Bitcoin has been stolen. As the price of Bitcoin continues to rise, the value of the stolen wallet will increase even more. You see, this is a thing, because Jimmy, and I'm not criticizing Bitcoin. I don't really know enough about it, and I know it comes across as sour grapes because I'm not in the game, but they say that everything's transparent, and because of this blockchain, you can see every transaction, things like that. Then you would surely think that, and I know they say it's anonymous, okay, but surely you would think that they could track the next person to use that string of code, that part of the blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, see, the thing is,
it can't be that transparent, dude, if you can't catch somebody that stole your crypto wallet.
The thing is, man, about it, the thing that everybody should listen to about it is the fact that you have these banking systems across the world that can get loans for no interest rates whatsoever. And they're taking that money, and on the Forex market, which is the currency market where you trade basically currencies against this one currency against another. And basically it's like 3 times the amount of money that's transmitted in the stock market a day is transmitted overnight in the Forex market. And these banks, what they do, let me put it this way. General Motors made more trading in the overnight Forex market, trading currencies against each other, than it did selling cars. That's how much money you can make. And so these players are all sitting behind the scenes with this Bitcoin, and they're just, getting loans from each other. using it as collateral for loans, getting other loans. I mean, there's a whole economy that's getting based around the Bitcoin.
Dude, you reminded me of a really funny story I came across today. I find it funny anyway. And you know, we've got 13 minutes left of the show, and I'm running out of time to mention Elon Musk. You know, it's like my go-to every night. I think that should be the drinking game for anyone who plays that when I'm on the air, since it's late over here in the UK. Anytime I Elon Musk, take a drink, right? But he's back in the news today, and we know he's determined to get to Mars. And it says here, headline from Sky News, SpaceX boss Elon Musk to launch his electric car into orbit around Mars. And it says here that Musk is to launch his own electric car into orbit around Mars, even playing David Bowie's Space Oddity. The SpaceX chief executive said when the company's Falcon Heavy rocket launches in January, the quote payload will be a midnight cherry Tesla Roadster. He added destination is Mars orbit. It will be deep in space for 1 billion years or so if it doesn't blow up on the ascent. Now, it goes on to say that the billionaire entrepreneur tweeted his plans last week, and it was uncertain whether he was joking. Just bear in mind that there was a good chance this monster rocket blows up, so I wouldn't put anything of irreplaceable sentiment value on it. SpaceX confirmed last night the plan is for real, though no date has been set for the launch from Cape Canaveral in Florida. The Falcon Heavy has been designed to carry crew and supplies to deep space destinations such as the Moon and the Red Planet. Now, I honestly think, Jimmy, he's going to do this. What a brilliant marketing gimmick for his Tesla cars that are already selling off the factory floor anyway.
I know. It's like Edward Bernays would be proud of him. You know, it's really too funny, too. The two things that these guys, because going back to that video that you had, you know, so eloquently brought to the table today on your show, with Geordie Rose talking about how he's going to build the AI. He basically threw the gauntlet down at Elon Musk. He was calling Elon Musk a wuss in that video going, yeah, Elon Musk is scared. He says the AIs are going to take off. And what's Elon Musk doing? He's trying to build stuff to get off the planet. So it's funny.
As well, we could look at it even more in a kind of tongue-in-cheek comedy fashion because, you know, I imagine likes of him, Peter Thiel, your man that runs Palantir, Elon Musk, all of them, they must all hang out together, right? Because Bezos as well, Jeff Bezos, he'll be there, Zuckerberg, all these cats, right? Bill Gates,
they're all there.
They're hanging out together, right? So, I can't remember where I was going now, Jimmy.
They were meeting. They're all meeting in the conference room, figuring out where things are going to be heading.
That's it, dude. I know what it is. And you see, the one thing about that kind of group of people that I read out there, that's the odd one out, would be Elon Musk. Because most of the other people, be it Google, Amazon CEOs, Facebook, anyone from the government, stuff like that, well, they've all forked out $15 million for a D-Wave, right? Not your man Elon Musk, though. So I wonder if there's a beef there between the two of them because Elon said, nah, I'm not buying your machine. I'll just get a shot of Jeff sometime. Because he has admitted that he's had a shot of a quantum machine. So I'd imagine it's his friend Jeff Bezos over at Amazon.
Well, I don't know, man. Maybe it costs $15 mil to throw in the hat just to get to the table to have a conversation. And maybe,
Well, the end of my plans to get any of them on the show then, Jimmy.
No, I'm talking about whatever they were talking about. I'm sure they're happy to talk about other stuff. But, I mean, whatever those main kind of conversations are where those kind of heads get together, you know, I mean, who honestly, realistically, who knows what's possible? I mean, you know, there could be whole civilizations living on space platforms that we don't even know about. Dude, you know, I mean, if there's underground cities, why can't there be space platforms? It's the same technology to live deep underground as it is to float around. So,
you know what? I mean, Elon Musk, he's going up to Mars, and I really do think he will succeed in his dream of going and at least starting the colony on there. And he does contracts with the government. We know that. We've seen him meeting at Trump Tower with Trump himself. So I imagine over here in the UK, Jimmy, we have the Official Secrets Act. And when you work for the government over there, I expect there's NDAs and kind of government papers that you sign that won't allow you to talk about things. So, I mean, that doesn't take away from the fact that I believe there are probably some kind of bases or activity by a secret space program up on the moon, Mars and beyond. Because if Elon Musk's going up there, Jimmy, he's obviously, if he's in the dark about that, he's going to find it when he gets there. But if he's already been read in on the government side, then he knows what's up there. He could just be going to kind of start the normalization of the fact that we've been on there for a very, very long time.
Well, it just may be possible to float cities somehow, by vibrating, frequencies and build material, build a platform on a certain material that vibrates off a frequency. And I mean, if you line that up, maybe it's possible to float these platforms and those, occasionally you see it breaks through the cloaking device and you see these cities break through and everybody takes pictures. Look at these floating cities. I mean, that's, it's pretty amazing when you see that. But then when you think back what we were saying earlier with the...
That's what I was going to just say, man. You're right. What they could do in the sky.
Exactly.
Projects.
I mean... Yeah, that's why your show, I mean, to me, I've always been a fan. I'll just take a minute here, Kev. I've always been a fan of your show. And that's why, is because you bring such great information to the table. And it's such an honor and a pleasure to be able to be here with you and have, something positive to add to the conversation. I really want to thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
No, man.
I appreciate all your hard work, man. You're the hardest working man in show business. I mean, even when you were dead, you were on the air. You had a heart attack, you came on the air, man. You never miss a show. And dude, someone ought to say that, brother, thank you for all your hard work. I'm going to speak for everybody who listens. Thank you so much for everything you do, man. It's really you provide a really valuable show for the world to hear. And thank you.
I must thank you for that. But everyone here at TFR equally doing a brilliant job, and it's just the times we're living in. I think, Jimmy, you yourself, you're out there, you're brave enough to go on the mic, you're the voice in other people's head. You're really confirming things for people that are questioning everything right now, as all of us are. And, hosts, listeners, people that share links, it all comes together. It's almost like that positive side of the collective consciousness, and we all have our own roles to play, and this isn't for everyone. You've got to be thick-skinned, and I think we're all equally doing a really, really great job right now, and that's why we see more and more people wanting this type of information, more and more people asking questions, and that's what it's always been about, because for so long, people never even paid attention. The fact that people are even asking about things now, that, to me, is a win. We don't have to agree on all the theories, but the fact we're questioning things, well, I tell you what, that's a massive step along the road from where I was when we first started out, and that's my personal journey. We've all had our own personal journeys. It used to be we all got kind of sidetracked by the various kind of things that came along, and it still happens. You still see that insight, that infighting that takes place over people's theories, but so many more people now are just stepping back and looking bigger picture and rightly questioning, but we're never really knowing, because how can any of us really know the truth, Jimmy, unless we're there in these individual instances or events we're talking about?
Yeah, the truth's a funny thing. I mean, the thing is if you want to know the truth, a lot of times, like, for example, I'll use a metaphor. Like, say you have a lover and you say, you're not cheating on me, are you? And you're just joking and you think, they're going to say no. But then they go, actually, I just wanted to say that, hey, I was thinking about we should spend some time apart or whatever. This whole thing that you guys talk about on this show, and even the time traveler theory that we were talking about earlier is even possible within the framework of what you guys talk about, because everything supposedly exists all in one, past, present, and future. It all exists in the same moment in time on a plane and, in a dimension. And it's like an ever growing microcosm, and each time you go further down, it gets smaller and smaller. You start to realize that things start looking, everything looks like a system. It doesn't look like it's random at all.
No, you're right there, dude. You're absolutely right there. And we were talking about truth a moment ago, and you got to be really careful about what the truth is, don't you? Because where do we find the truth? Well, we can go researching, we can go listening to other people. And what we're really doing there is getting somebody else's interpretation of something that happened. And that's somebody's own interpretation, even in a court of law. When I witness testimony to something, it's not regarded as very, very strong evidence, because there's a difference between truth and our perception of what has happened, even when we're there witnessing something. So we have to be really, really careful, Jimmy, when we're looking at all the information, all the various data that's coming in. And that's why I think it's best just to present it and let people make up their own mind, because, I don't want to bias people's opinions. And if you just present it all and don't tell people what's happening, then we can all come to our own conclusions, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's called an agreement reality, okay? And so all the people agree that a certain thing is real, and so it's real.
And we've been programmed to make sure that we always accept it's the most logical thing and people won't laugh at us real, right?
Right, and so... I mean, it's a never-ending cycle. It just keeps repeating over and over again. They keep refining it each time. And you can look at that, and as far as the computers are concerned, as far as history is concerned, as far as the programs that run within the generations are concerned, you can see flat out these programs run over and over. They refine them. They get more and more intense. They get more and more dialed in. And now you have an internet, and now you have a way to individually be piped information right into your very center of your soul. My show's on Friday and Saturday nights now, Kev. I got the weekends, and I'm after the crew of Beyond the Veil, Paranormal Portal, and then Into the Microcosms on at midnight Pacific. So I hope anybody that has a chance, if you don't mind, come by, stop on by. We like to get into some stuff that people don't normally talk about in the truth business. And
dude, you've just added to the weekend info marathon that takes place on here. I mean, I always used to think it kind of stopped after the Paranormal Portal, but now I'm learning that the Microcosm is on straight after that. Dude, This is like a download from another dimension, this whole kind of Friday experience. Those are all of the days here on TFR.
Yeah, and Scotty joined me for 3 shows. We did 3 shows on culture creation, and you can check those out in the archives. You can also subscribe to Kev's show. He gets 50% of all those subscriptions, and that's way more money than you could ever get on YouTube's with the way they're censoring everybody. And Kev's putting out a lot of information, so he's not monetizing that channel. Get over there and subscribe to the Kev Baker Show. My name's Jimmy Jean. You're listening to Kev Baker Show. We'll see you next week.
Wherever you are, make it TFR. And as a tip of the hat to the Whistler, did he touch that dial?